Welcome, friend. This is our time of encouragement and edification for motherhood and homeschooling. I am your host, Laura Molitier, and this is Cultivating Grace.
Morning time! Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy.
Welcome today to Cultivating Grace. We have a very special guest, my friend Amy from Humility and Doxology, and she is here today to talk to us about homeschooling through medical challenges. And so I will let Amy introduce you to herself, her blog, and her wonderful son, Isaac. So Amy, you want to go ahead and tell everybody?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be able to chat with you today. And this is obviously a topic that has become something very important to me over the past couple years. So I hope that it's an encouragement to your audience. But like you said, my name is Amy Sloan. I'm a second generation homeschooling mom of five. I now have two homeschool graduates, two adult children. Both of them are in college. Pursuing their degrees. And then I still have three children at home, 15, 13, and 10. So that will be an adjustment this year with only three at home, but I'm looking forward to that. And we love to homeschool in a restfully Christian classical way. We love good books and beautiful memory work and relationships and a lot of goofy nerdiness as well. So I write at humilityanddoxology.com, and I'm the host of the Homeschool Conversations with Humility and Doxology podcast. But the reason why I think you asked me to come on today and kind of chat about this topic is because of our experience over the past couple years with our youngest son, Isaac, who is now 10. But in the fall of 2023, so he was 8 years old, August, September of that time frame, we just noticed he was not recovering from an illness that he had experienced. Our whole family had been sick, and instead of recovering, he just seemed to be getting worse. And long story short, through blood work at our pediatrician, we were sent to the emergency room. He was in very, very bad shape. He immediately was receiving quite a few blood transfusions that night just to stabilize him. And he was diagnosed with leukemia. And that began a very intense first initial year of treatment with multiple months of hospitalizations for him. That was the first year, my oldest son, it was his freshman year of college. I still had four at home, trying to keep up with their homeschooling, meeting the emotional, physical, mental needs of Isaac and all the children, and going through that whole process has been extremely difficult. But also, we have seen God be faithful in that. And I am so incredibly thankful that we've been able to homeschool in the midst of that. A lot of times I've actually talked to another mom whose daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. And a lot of people ask her, like, why do you still homeschool? Like, wouldn't it be easier if you sent your kids somewhere else? And I've been able to encourage her. In my experience, the best thing for our family has been that we've still been able to be together in the midst of all that. Homeschooling has given us flexibility, but it's also given me the ability to continue Isaac's education through times when he was so incredibly sick. And yet to be able to continue little by little. Actually, he has a new oncologist because his old one moved, and we had interacted with him before, and he came in to see us for the first time in a while. He was like, "Oh, Isaac, what are you reading lately? Because I remember your mom always had like books of shelves of books set up in your hospital room. So I know you must be reading books." Um, so yeah, I'm not sure, there's so many things I could share. I will before we get into detailed questions you have, I just want to share two things. One is, I mentioned we love beautiful memory work in our family. I know your family loves that as well. And I've always kind of joked with my kids that I'm not going to tell them lists of facts. We're going to memorize these poems, these beautiful things. So, if they're in prison one day, they have something to hold on to. And I was in the emergency room that very first night, knowing my son was near death, actually, at that point, come to find out. Um, but at that point, I didn't know what was going on. And what was going over and over in my head was Death Be Not Proud by John Donne, one of the very first poems I had ever memorized with my children years ago. And we return to it often because it's a favorite. And that was what came to my own mind and heart in that time of crisis and hardship. And I was like, yes, like I'm getting goosebumps just saying it right now because I was like, oh, I thought it was for my kids, but it was for me too,
Right.
So anyway, yeah, I could go on, but what do you want me to share? What questions do you have?
No, that's perfect. That's one of my favorites. I cry every time I read that one. It's beautiful. But I think the same thing. We even see it in scriptures when you're in prison or something that feels like prison, which I think, especially when our children are struggling, it does feel that way. But they were singing hymns and psalms, so there is a really biblical precedent for memory work.
Yes,
So
definitely.
I think that's something that we need to remember. There have been multiple times as a mom that I've had hymns or poems or things pop into my head that are just life giving. And so I would say that that's probably your first tip for people, right? Make sure that you have those beautiful things to pull from for encouragement when you're dealing with these medical challenges. And so I know there are probably a million different things you could share, but it's great that you pointed out you were able to continue Isaac's education, especially, and your other children's. So, what would be a tip that you might have for a family going through something similar as far as continuing education for the child? Because I know, especially when they don't feel well, even with just a cold, sometimes your children are not super interested in learning. So, what were some things that you were able to do to keep him engaged in the learning process?
So one of the very first things I did in those initial like week, the few days to the week after diagnosis is I knew number one, it was really important to me to continue to educate my children well. That's a really high priority for our family. And also, I knew that I needed to really understand that all of us were going through, not just the physical side of things and the logistic side of things, but an incredibly intense emotional trauma. It's been difficult, not just for Isaac, it's been difficult for his siblings, for all of us, and continues to be hard. So I knew that those two things, I needed to care about the actual people, right? Like we always talk about that as homeschoolers, like relationships matter most, the souls in your care, that matters most, right? So that value I had and the value of the academics and the education. So what I did is I made a choice of the things I was going to say no to. And this would be my first bit of recommendation is on purpose decide what your must do's are. And then the things that if you can get to them, great. If not, that's fine. And then the things that you're just going to say no to for now. And that's going to be that last group is going to be a hard one because it's going to be things that are really, really good and even really, really important. But there were things that I chose this year. We are going to say no to that entire subject. And I decided that, in September after his diagnosis, because I knew what would I do? I would put it on the list. I knew we weren't going to get to it. And then it was going to be this burden on us the whole year of that thing we never got to, right?
Right.
So there was the thing that I just said, nope, we're taking that off the list. I'm choosing that right now. Then I made that choice of these are the things that are most important every day. A little bit of math, a little bit of reading, right? And that time together for the beautiful memory work, that morning time that was such a key part of our together familyness. I was like, that's really important for me to maintain. So even on the hardest days, we could still do something together for morning time, a little poetry, a little hymn singing, some catechism, Bible. We could do a little bit of math. Sometimes for Isaac, it was literally like he was so sick and we would just do like a couple things, but keeping that pattern up as much as we could. and then a little bit of reading. Isaac was still a bit of a struggling reader, so I didn't want him to lose the momentum of
Right.
working on reading with his eyes, but I didn't push too much on those hard days. And I just filled his audiobooks with all of the great books. That child has listened to amazing literature in the hospital, in his room, on the sofa. And so just filling his mind with good works. And then that middle group was those things that we would try to get to when we could. Um, but be okay if we didn't get to them every time. So kind of like deciding the things you're going to say no to, even though they're really good, deciding your must-dos every day, and then having the flexibility with those other things. That was really helpful, just to be doing things on purpose, to do things purposefully, when there's so much out of your control in a time of medical crisis was really helpful. Um, and I was, blessed and thankful because Isaac was the youngest. My other children were old enough to be able to do some things independently. Um, although, his next oldest sister was 10 or 11 at the time. So she was still learning that skill as well. And just to try to have reasonable expectations. It can be easy when you're in that crisis, just like, come on, kids. Like, I need you to not need me. Like, I need you to just step up to the plate and do your thing. And that's not fair. And that's not kind. And so just really focusing first on their spiritual and emotional needs. Sometimes those long hospitalizations, my husband and I were just basically taking turns who was spending days and nights with Isaac. When I came home, a kid didn't need me to be like, what, you didn't do your math today? It's like, I can't, why didn't you do your math? What they needed was they needed to cuddle with mom on the sofa and watch a silly movie. And that was okay too, which I think is a harder adjustment for those of us who are very responsible
And
and we must do
academically
our
inclined.
to-dos and teaching grit and determination and all those things. But again, in a crisis mode, you have to remember the people come first. So
Yes, I love that. Um, so I know I'm not the only mom that has this question. But when we have friends who are going through these things, what are some practical ways that we might not think of that are things that are actually really helpful for the family? I mean, I know, especially distance wise, when somebody's far away from us, I feel like one of the best things we can do besides praying is like sending gift cards and things. But what are some practical ways for people that are closer to us to that we can help?
yeah, it was really helpful. One of my friends, right initially after Isaac's diagnosis, um, basically voluntold herself and was like, no, Amy, I will be doing this. And I am incredibly grateful. She became the point person. So many people were texting and emailing with offers of help. And I was just trying to figure out how I was going to keep my child alive. And it didn't feel helpful. I knew I needed help, but I couldn't process that as well. And so one tip is if you're in the time of crisis, accept help, ask someone to do this for you. And if you're a good friend of someone and you're in a place where you can be that point person, she set up a spreadsheet. I only talked to her. I told her what I needed. I told her if, there were things like children who needed to go to places, all that kind of stuff. She handled everything else. She navigated people. She made sure there was someone for all of the different transportation needs. She took care if someone ended up needing to back out or needed a substitute. And if people had questions of how to help, they could direct all those to her. So I didn't have to navigate I mean, we had so many people love us and be so kind and helpful. But in the immediate, um, in those immediate days, I couldn't process. And
Right.
so that would be my first bit of advice is um, ask someone to be your point person or be that yourself. And that was an incredible gift. I'm very thankful. Secondly, I would say it does depend on the personality. I've heard a lot of people say, don't ask me how I can help, just show up. That wouldn't be loving to me. If you just showed up and did something for me, I'd feel a little stressed out. Okay. I'd like a little heads up. But for other people, they feel the exact opposite. So be willing to know the person and how they need help, how they receive help, and then also understand that in a time of crisis, they may not be the healthiest version of themselves. And so be patient and kind and give the benefit of the doubt to them. I would say that food is always a good option. Gift cards can be a great option, although this is a very like specific. I would say Visa gift cards are actually not great. We had a lot of issues with them. They're very difficult to use and ended up having a lot of it being stolen, like just a lot of issues. So I would say go to a specific like restaurant gift card, like find out what restaurants are near the hospital or grocery card gift cards, those kinds of things, if you want to do that. And then I would also say don't forget the other siblings or the other family members. The child or the individual who is sick, of course, everyone thinks a lot about them and is quick to serve them, bring them special treats, write them letters, bring them toys or whatever. And that is great. They need all of that. But don't forget their siblings and don't forget, the other parent, maybe not the mom, but maybe the dad who could use a little bit of encouragement as well. Those people who have remembered my other children and have done something special for them just because that has meant a lot to my other kids and it's been a lot to me. So those are a few little practical pieces of advice I would say. But yeah, also, okay, one last thing. So those of you who have ever run like a long race know that you don't just need like water or Gatorade near the beginning. Like you need people all along the way. We are now 2 years into Isaac's treatment. We still have 6 more months of active treatment, and there will be several years of follow-up and other issues that we'll be dealing with. In those initial few months, tons of people want to help. As time has gone on, 2 years in, there are still people who continue to write us letters every week, who pray for us, who check in on us. It's a much smaller group of people, but that matters almost just as much, or maybe if not more, than all of those people who did all sorts of amazing things right there at the beginning. So if you want to help, like be the person who's going to stick around for the whole marathon.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I think the marathon, um, it has actually been really a blessing. I think I know for me, but to watch how you've navigated this, I know we don't see all the behind the scenes, but you've had so much grace and you've been so willing to share with people. That has actually been really a blessing to me. And I know it's been a blessing to other moms in the homeschool community too. I have seen you share some really cool things that do help not just Isaac, but also his siblings. So the one that I love because I like to bake is when you share their birthday cakes. But I know there have been a couple different organizations that you've mentioned that I had never heard of. So would you like to share some of the organizations that are out there that families can utilize to help brighten this sort of tough road that you've been on?
Yes, definitely. So you mentioned the cakes. That organization is Icing Smiles. I really do love that they don't just do cakes for the child who is quite ill, but also for the siblings. So Icing Smiles. Team Impact is another thing that we've really enjoyed as a family that connects a seriously ill child with a college level sports team. They actually sign with the team. They're not a mascot, they're considered a team member. And that's been really special, actually, not just for Isaac, but for our whole family to feel like we're a part of that team. Um, the NEGU stands for Never Ever Give Up, NEGU. They send monthly joy jars and other fun things. That's just, a nice bit of joy burst, especially on those especially hard months. And let's see, I wrote down because I was like, I'm going to forget something. Um, oh, the other one I wanted to mention is the Oliver Patch Project. So there you get a monthly like there's patches or patches for like when you had a blood transfusion or when you had, a lumbar puncture and things like that, or just fun patches. You can either put them on a jacket or on a bag. So Isaac has his on a bag, and that's like the bag we use to take his stuff to the hospital now. And that's really fun and special too. So those are, I think, the organizations that have been most helpful to our family.
That is wonderful. That sounds like the coolest thing, like turning your not so fun things into something where you actually get an award for it.
Right?
I like that. Maybe I should do that with laundry. Um,
I, every homeschool mom needs a patch, like a patch a month. Good
yes,
job for making dinner again.
right. I felt that at lunch today. I did quiche. I was like, man, why do I have to cook so many times? I know that you are a book person and a book family. Have there been any books that really helped you or your husband, or your children, or Isaac, with going through these things? Do you have any stellar recommendations?
Yeah. So many people sent me books, and I have to say I struggled to actually read at all, which, as you understand, as someone who has kind of seen me online for a while, there were the first several months after diagnosis, like I couldn't read. It was the weirdest thing. Um, and that's normally how I process everything is through books. But the first book, those of you who are watching on video, hopefully you can see, but it's called In the Hands of a Fiercely Tender God by Colleen Chow. She actually um, currently is a well, she is dealing with terminal cancer, but is a cancer survivor at the moment. Side note, you are considered a cancer survivor from the moment of your diagnosis as long as you live.
Wow.
Um, but this is 31 days of hope, honesty, and encouragement for the sufferer. If you are someone in suffering or know someone, I have given this now as a gift to so many people. The chapters are so short, which when you are in trauma mode, sometimes that's all you can take. But each chapter was very real from someone who is in the midst of incredible suffering and grief. So some of the things that you read just didn't feel authentic to me when I was dealing with a child who was potentially dying. But her book felt like it was true. And each chapter also pointed to Jesus and pointed to the gospel in such a beautiful way. I cannot recommend this book more. It's very small, and each chapter speaks truth. And so, highly recommend In the Hands of a Fiercely Tender God.
Awesome. So, because you are a book person, I know that there are fun books. What are some books that you've read recently that just brought joy to your heart and helped kind of alleviate some of the seriousness that you have been dealing with for the last couple years?
Yes. So thankfully, I came out of that like inability to read and making up for lost time. So I was struggling with this question because I was like, oh, what about this title and that title and the other one? But let's stick with just fun titles, right? Okay. So these two books that I will recommend are family memoirs, which is a kind of unique genre. They're both written by brilliant women who were academics, writers, interesting people in their own right. But the book that they wrote is a family memoir. So it's like a story of them with their children and their husband, and just have brought me absolute joy this year. So the first one is called Bedlam in the Back Seat by Janet Gillespie. When my husband heard that title, he was like, "What are you reading?" I was like, no, it's like a family road trip. It is one of the most delightful books I have read in years. Highly recommend. It is not in print. I bought it, a used old copy. It was worth every single penny I spent. If you have ever thought, I want to take my kids to Europe and like backpack through Europe, go on a trip through Europe, a road trip, this book is for you. Highly recommend. As I read that one, so I think it was written in like the 50s, maybe. As I read it this summer, I was like, oh, this reminds me of Life Among the Savages by Shirley Jackson. But I haven't read that one in like 20 years. I should reread it. So the second title I'll recommend is Life Among the Savages by Shirley Jackson. She is most famous as an American horror writer, actually, if you've read The Lottery, that short story. But this is her memoir. It's her as a mother with these young children in this old rambling country house. Chaos ensues. What I love about both of these books, and especially Bedlam in the Backseat, Shirley Jackson's book has a little bit more of a bite to it, but especially Gillespie's book. She is able to perfectly paint those absolutely wacky scenarios we have all experienced with our families of just like everyone getting on everyone else's last nerve and nothing going right and the car breaking down at the wrong point. And yet you still believe they all love each other and are just laughing at the end of it, right? So it's not a bitter book, but it's also very funny and very relatable.
I was going to say, it sounds very true to life.
Yes. So those would be my two top recommendations for the moms listening.
Thank you so much, Amy. I so appreciate you stopping and sharing this with us, because I know it's just one of those things that I think happens in life, and we have to learn how to navigate it. So it helps to have some tips ahead of time, but also to know how to help other people when they're going through it. So thank you so very much for sharing with us. I'll make sure to post links to all of the organizations you mentioned and to these amazing books. And I cannot wait to read Bedlam in the Backseat. That sounds hysterical. Awesome. Thank you, Amy, so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. God is faithful. All those things that you believe on the good days, they're still true on the hard days.
Yes, and amen.
Thank you for joining us today on Cultivating Grace. And if you have a moment today, we'd love it if you'd leave us a rating on your favorite podcast listening service so that they know we aren't talking to ourselves out here. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.